quite a privilege for me. As Ross just said, it's been 11 years that I was able to do this in my role as dean, and now I'm here as provost. I think the business school has given me one last shot, so this is one. You're going to get the whole thing here tonight. I know as the provost, my job is to support and champion all of the academic programs on our campus. And I intend to do that, but I will tell you that it just seems totally unrealistic to me to think that I will not have always quite a special sweet spot in my heart for this school, for this faculty and staff, and for the students who make up this community. This is a really, really special place, and consequently this feels like a special night for me. I hope that it will also feel like a special night for you. We actually intend this event as a marker event to really signify in a way that we hope maybe even years from now you will remember that this is the moment where in a sense you become part of us, that you join in this community of faculty and staff and of students who have been here before you, and of really literally generations of students who have gone through the program and are now reconnecting in their role as alumni. And it's a wonderful, wonderful community, and we're delighted to have this evening to really bring you into this special time. I'm going to talk for actually about 30 minutes. And so those of you that have your chairs with your back to me and sort of looking over your shoulder, really why don't you get up and turn your chairs around, because you will be much more comfortable before you're through than just kind of looking over your shoulder. Some of you may have run into this. It was quite popular. About 2 years ago, there was a book, actually a trilogy of books, and then a movie called Hunger Games. And having now read the book and watched the movie, I continue to be a little nervous about why a story that's primarily about teenagers killing each other has gotten so popular in our culture. But I thought I would use that as just kind of a segue, if I like, to pick on this word hunger and being hungry and what it means to have an appetite to go after things and to pursue them with a real hunger, and what that would look like. And the reason I want to kind of talk about that is because over the years, and honestly with many happy exceptions, I have kind of come to the conclusion that most SPU, or at least many SPU students, don't seem very hungry. They don't seem to have that kind of extra push to get that last piece of information, to make that last connection. There seems to me often to be a culture of what I call good enough. I've done most of the work and that's good enough. And I've wondered over the years where this good enough culture comes from. Part of it, I think, maybe that, at least for many of our students, not certainly all of them, but many have had relatively charmed lives and things have unfolded for them well without necessarily putting in a lot of effort at times. I think some people may feel this way because you look out into the future and the world is changing so fast and it's being changed by forces that you don't have any control over, and it seems like, why try so hard? I'll just jump into the lap of fate and see where it all takes me. I also worry a little bit that maybe some of this comes out of our theological conviction, that we talk about being a grace-filled community, and I wonder at times whether being a grace-filled community makes people think that we will tolerate mediocrity. There is no real connection between grace and mediocrity, but I wonder if that isn't a piece of it. In any event, what I'm hoping is that tonight, if you are not already hungry, that I can get you a little bit more hungry. I have a friend who's does a lot of work in developing majority world countries and working with famine relief and refugee camps. And he's told me that over the years that what he's observed is that people who have been malnourished for a long time, basically starving over a long period of time, you can bring them a whole bunch of food, but they won't eat it. That they have lost any sense of appetite. And he says what AIDS workers have learned that they need to do is to dip their fingers in sugar water and then wipe the lips of the folks who are starving, because just that little bit of sugar water reignites the hunger, I don't know if it's glands, but reignites the hunger, desire, or appetite. And that's kind of what I want to do. I want to do a little sugar water with you tonight to kind of give you a sense of what you could be hungry about. Now, you can try to get people to be hungry by appealing to obedience. Your parents are paying a lot of money, you should try hard. Or to fear, like, oh, there's all these brilliant people in China that are working 3 times harder than you, and they're all going to compete for the same jobs. But I would much rather talk to you about why it's kind of inspiring in this situation, why you could, from a sense of being energized by the possibilities, you might pursue some things with a little more hunger. You all, I'm sure, are well familiar with the SPU culture, engage the culture, change the world. And every school department has looked at that and sort of said, what's our particular take on that? And in the business school, this is kind of what we've ended up with. We say we want to play a catalytic role, that is the role of a change agent in transforming, not just tweaking, but transforming the way business is done around the world. That's what we're about as a business school. Now that may seem like a huge mission, but we have a plan. And our plan is basically you. That's what we're going to do. We're going to prepare you to go out and be change agents in the world, to transform business from within in a way that will really help business do its work differently. And so that's what I want to talk to you about. And it may sound kind of far-fetched, but it turns out that this is a very strategic moment in history that you have come into this program. Probably in a way that would not have been true for the last 4 or 5 decades. I sense that in the broader culture, both Christian and non-Christian alike, there is an openness, a willingness to ask, is there another way of doing business? Could we do business differently? Now nobody I know is interested in like socialism, so this is all free market capitalism. Certainly it's what we're going to be talking about in the business school. But it's still, after a decade of ethical failures and collapses and great recessions and high unemployment, people are saying, isn't there maybe another way of doing business? And you hear this from some of the folks that you would expect to hear it from, your kind of Occupy Wall Street group, but you're also hearing it from people that are typically big fans of business. The Financial Times has run a series this last year, Capitalism in Crisis. Aspen Institute, that partners with some of the best business schools in the country, is gathering groups of people, practitioners and academicians together to ask the question, what is the purpose of business? The Edelman Trust Survey comes back measuring the values and instincts of people all across the United States, actually all around the world, but in the United States, showing that the general population now expects business to be about a whole lot of things different and more than just managing the bottom line. You have Davos, you remember, where the rich and the powerful gather in Europe each year. Last year, I'm told that one of the central agenda items was how should we tweak a 20th century capitalism to make it work in the 21st century? We have Bill Gates calling for a creative capitalism. We have John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods, calling for a conscious capitalism. It just seems to me everywhere you look, you find people saying, can we do this a little differently? Isn't there another way of doing business? And this strikes me as a unique moment in history where Christians, armed with a theologically grounded understanding of business, will be given a hearing and will have an opportunity to speak into this conversation in a way that may well be received unlike it would have been a decade ago, and perhaps unlike it will be a decade from now. So it's a very strategic time. And then it turns out, actually, that this is a very strategic place. Little old SPU. It turns out that in terms of as far as we can tell, and we can't say this for sure, but if we look around, literally around the world, we probably have the largest concentration of business faculty who are at work on issues of faith and business, or business and theology, of any place in the world. We are recognized around the broader Christian community, business schools, communities, as leaders in this area. We are very frequently invited to sort of make presentations at these kinds of gatherings. And it comes out of this school's conviction that we want to do business and think about business from the ground up theologically. In addition, this school has the capacity to speak into the broader business community that is really unlike most other Christian business schools. I think I said this to some of you in your macroeconomics classes, but think again, Venn diagrams. Think you got a big circle over here. This is all of the schools that are part of the Council of Christian Colleges and Universities. So that's your Wheatons and your Whitworth and Azusa Pacific Biola, all of those folks there. And we're, of course, part of that circle. And then think of a circle over here, which is all of the schools that have AACSB accreditation for their business programs. This is the highest level of accreditation that a business program can get. Less than 10% of the business schools around the world get this, and we're in this circle too. And actually, the intersection of these two circles is very small. There are only 2 schools that are both members of the CCCU and have this AACSB accreditation, and SPU is the first one. And what that really means is that we have a capacity to go deeply into the theological understanding of business on the one hand, but then the credibility to speak about broadly into the business community in a way that has credibility, that we can speak into a community that expects high-quality business disciplinary work as a kind of prerequisite for entering the conversation. And so this is a strategic time and a strategic place, and you all have the opportunity to come in and join with us in developing these thoughts and to work on this. So let me tell you just very quickly what it means, what we mean when we talk about another way of doing business. I suspect you've heard this in a number of your classes already. I'm sure you will hear more of it before you graduate. There are lots and lots of pieces to it, but let me sort of highlight probably the central piece. And the central piece goes to the question of purpose. What is the purpose of business from God's perspective? So the picture I have is that God is sitting in heaven with a blank sheet of paper on his lap, or her lap, or however you want to think about that, and that God is going to write down the mission statement for the institution of business as a whole, not for any one company, but for the institution. In other words, what is the purpose of this whole thing we call business? I remember at one point trying to explain to my dad that as a business school we were working on this. My dad is a mild-mannered professor, kind of quiet professor of electrical engineering. And I was explaining to him that in the business school, the faculty were wrestling with this question of purpose. And I could see him getting more and more agitated. And then finally, in a way that was quite uncharacteristic for him, he interrupts me and he says, "Jeff, come on. Everybody knows what the purpose of business is. The purpose of business is to make money." Of course, we like to say in a slightly more sophisticated fashion in business school, to maximize the return on shareholder investment. And that really is still probably the dominant understanding of business purpose that operates in our world today. Most public corporations run on that model. Many private companies do. And I can tell you that virtually all business school curriculum is built off of that frame. Its patron saint of this view is, perhaps apocryphally, we're not sure, is quoted as saying, this is Milton Friedman, that the business of business is business. Well, we thought about this quite a bit. And we think at best that's inadequate, and it's probably just wrong. And in fact, as we have, and I don't have time tonight to show you how we have developed this, but as we have thought about the purpose of business, we have ended up concluding this, that business exists from God's perspective for 2 key reasons. First, it exists to provide opportunities for individuals to express aspects of their God-given identity in meaningful and creative work. In other words, business exists to create meaningful and creative jobs. And then secondly, it exists to provide goods and services that will enable the community to flourish. We sort of shorthand that and we say that business exists to serve with good jobs and good products. Now, people, when I give this talk in other settings, will sometimes say, but well, what about profit? There's no profit in your statements. What's that? Don't you guys care about profit? As you know already, and you will certainly learn through this program, we care a great deal about profit, return on investment, efficiencies, cost of capital, and all those kinds of things. But here's the difference. We don't teach profit as the end, as the purpose. We teach it as the means. Profit is what is there to draw the capital that a business needs to do what it's supposed to do, which is to serve in these 2 key ways. Now, if you think about that for a minute, you'll realize that what we're doing is suggesting that the dominant paradigm be turned upside down. In the dominant paradigm, Sure, you want to be good to your employees, give them meaningful work to do. Why? Well, it'll reduce turnover, it'll keep your expenses down, more profits. You want to have good products and services. Why? Well, it'll build brand loyalty, increase sales, more profits. But in this model, good jobs and good products serve profitability. And in our model, we're suggesting that it's the other way around. That profits are what are necessary to attract the capital, to enable the business to do what it should serve. Now, it's not that profits aren't critically important. The metaphor that we often use is the notion of blood. If I have blood, if you think of profits like blood, if I don't have blood circulating in my body, we do not need to have a long conversation about my purpose, because I'm dead. And if we don't have profit circulating in a business, we don't have to have a long talk about the purpose of that business, because it's bankrupt. But if you think about it, which of you gets up in the morning and says to yourself, today my purpose to live is to pump blood? I mean, no, it's critically important, but it's not the purpose. Business exists to serve, and to serve a community that business can touch in ways that many other institutions will never be able to touch. And that's why it is that we are so excited about this alternate perspective. I have a friend that is on our executive advisory council, is very high up in Microsoft, and he's a Harvard MBA. And he told me that when he first went into the Harvard MBA program, that the dean of the business school had an orientation for all the new students like this. He came forward and he said, Harvard is the West Point of capitalism. So I heard that, and I thought, well, if they're the West Point, we can't be West Point. But I thought, you know what we can do? We'll be Langley. You know, Langley is the headquarters of the CIA. Because that's kind of how we think about this. We're training you to be secret agents, to sneak into companies around the world and work from within to transform and change the way they do business, and to help them orient them towards service. Tim Keller says, Tim Keller, by the way, is a very well-known preacher and pastor in Redeemer Presbyterian Church. He says this, he says, the Bible makes clear that there are only two kingdoms, and each one has a foundational operating principle. For the kingdom of God, the operating principle is serve. For the kingdom of this world, the principle is be served. One pathway brings blessing, the other a curse. We believe business exists to serve, and we want you to be readied and made able to carry that message out and work transformation in the world. So, what does that mean? Three things I want to highlight for you. We want to prepare you to leave here with competence, with character, and connections. Okay, competence. Competence, we mean you have to have a high level of technical competence in various business disciplines. We have no view that we are somehow going to trade knowledge of a few more Bible verses in exchange for not really knowing a subject matter. We want you to be as smart about marketing and finance and management and international business as anybody that graduates from any other business school. We want you to have deep knowledge about business disciplines. What does that mean for you if you're going to be hungry? Here's what it means. Do the work. We put the work out in the syllabus. Do it. Do it all. I mean, I know that you've learned easily how to skim some readings rather than read them, how to skip a reading right at the end, how to get a 1 or 2 paragraph summary from a friend just before you go into class so that you can fake it. I see smiles, I know you've done this. But don't do this. Do the work. Do all of it, and we assign it for that reason. Focus on skills. I think we're living in a world now where knowledge is going to be less and less important because you can get knowledge pretty much at your fingertips. What you can't get at your fingertips are the skills to know how to manage, how to use, how to assess that. So focus on skills. Focus on the kinds of skills we're trying to teach you. Oral presentation, teamwork, critical thinking, and most importantly, in my judgment, writing. You ought to commit to make one of the big agenda items for the balance of your college career to be a better, in fact, a good writer. My experience from reading essays from seniors graduating, that is that if I were an employer and as part of the employment practice, I asked you to write a 1 paragraph, just anything, just write me a paragraph, I suspect that about 1/4 of our students, I would throw their application away based on just what I see in that 1 paragraph. Our writing is not up to what it needs to be. But if you can write well, you will move yourself to the front of the line very quickly, and that will make you a more effective secret agent. So focus on your writing. Our learning is emphasized, we emphasize as applied. So zero in on how you're going to put this one to work. The mentor program that we offer is the easiest thing you can do. It's just amazing how easy it is to get a mentor. But still, every year, about a third of our students graduate without ever having sought out a mentor. Our better students graduate having had multiple mentors, friends in the community already out there supporting them, ready to help them when they leave. But a third, I don't get it. They're not hungry. They don't take that opportunity. Internships are required for our business majors, but strongly encouraged for our econ and accounting majors. Study abroad opportunities exist. Business plan competitions, either by entering a business plan competition at another university or entering our social venture business plan competition. Some of you probably know this already, but the program has a signature experience requirement. What this means is that in addition to taking all the classes that you're required, all of you will either need to have had a certain number of units in our spirituality and business courses, or will have needed to do a study abroad, or will have needed to do a business plan competition, or if you're a U Scholars, do an honors project in business. But you will need to pick one of those. You can do more than one, but go ahead and dip into applied learning. High competence. We want you to graduate with high character. This is one of the reasons we pay attention in the business program to your spiritual development. It's one of the reasons we will talk openly about the role of spiritual disciplines in business, because we think it's part of the character development that will make you more effective. Ethics, as you know, is very central to our curriculum. You're going to have business ethics as your capstone course, but in addition, along the way, every class, we ask faculty to introduce questions of ethics and faith and value, and after every class, we ask you to comment on how well those faculty did. And as dean, I would read all of those comments, and then I would sit down with the faculty and say, hey, you did that well, you didn't do that so well. So we really take ethics seriously, and we try to wind it through the whole program. On this question of character, let me say one other thing. Don't cheat. You know, we read the stats. The stats are staggering, the number of college students, the percentage of college students that admit cheating. Don't cheat. We're not naive enough to think that it doesn't happen at SPU because we're a good Christian school. And really, in a way that's quite disappointing, consistently, the percentage of cheaters in business schooling is higher than the average across the university. Don't cheat for a bunch of reasons. Don't cheat because if we catch you, we take it very seriously, and it will have potentially long-term consequences on your future and your career. But that's the negative reason. Don't cheat because if you cheat, you're kind of stealing from the other people in the classroom, either because you're lowering their grade or because you're lowering the quality of what their grade actually means. The main reason don't cheat is because you don't want to be a cheater. I mean, that's not the kind of person you want to be. Do the work so that you don't need to cheat. We want you to have high competence and high character, and then we want you to have lots of good connections by the time you leave here. People have already said this in terms of connecting with faculty, but I want to encourage you to begin to build your networks now. I remember when I was in college, people started talking to me about networking, and it seemed kind of dirty. It seemed like, you know, you were trying to put a bunch of names in my Rolodex that I could use people in the future to get ahead. I want to invite you to think about it differently. When I was first hired to be the dean here, I didn't really understand exactly what I could bring. I didn't come out of a business school background. I didn't have any great depth in any particular business school disciplines. But you know what I did have? It turns out by being a lawyer in Seattle for 20 years, I had connections. I didn't really necessarily think I was cultivating these cool connections. I didn't use these connections necessarily to get me ahead, but I had connections such that if somebody said, hey, do you know somebody at Boeing in this area? I didn't often know exactly that, but I often knew someone who could make that kind of an introduction. I tend to think of networking now as building up a resource that I can give away, that I can make available to others. And at its best, networking is a reciprocal sharing of resources, one with another. Do start building. One of the saddest moments as me as dean was sitting in the spring quarter, near the end of the spring quarter with a senior saying, you know, I better start networking. Well, yeah, I suppose better late than never. But really use this time while you're here to build your networks. Who should you build with? You've heard it 3 or 4 times already. Network with your faculty. I get this impression sometimes that students think that if they were to call up a faculty member and say, hey, could we have a cup of coffee? The faculty member would think, oh, what an imposition. You know, that's not true. This is why we here. This is why we exist. Those are the magic moments in teaching that we live for. You know, you might think we live for grading scantrons, but it's not true. What we live for are these special moments where someone kind of reaches out to us. Almost every faculty member here could have done a different career, could have made more money, could have gone to different schools, but they came here because they are hoping for the chance to build tight connections with some students. So take advantage of it. They will welcome your inquiry. Network with other students, the ones you like and the ones you don't like. You might work on trying to make yourself likable, because as a practical matter, we have very notable alums, people who are in great positions, and you are going to know people as you graduate with your colleagues, and they are going to be able to be in a position to share resources with you in the future. And then finally, let me just tell you that I really think you need to network with members of the business community that we bring here. We bring, over the course of a year, a huge number of guest speakers and so on to our campus. And you can go and sit in the back and listen and make a few notes, and it's fine. But you can hang around afterwards and go make connections with them. We had one time we brought in the guy that headed the commercial side of Bowen. He came with a bodyguard and everything. I mean, this was like #2 guy in Bowen. He gave a nice talk and everybody clapped. We had one student go up to him afterwards and said, hey, could I have coffee with you? And the guy said, sure. And he went and had coffee with him. He had connections now at the top of Bowen. You never could probably do that within the company, but you have these unique opportunities to connect with business leaders when they come here. So please take advantage of that. We want you to have high confidence, high character, and a good set of connections when you need, in order that you can go out and be effective change agents. Let me just finish by saying this. Here's our commitment to you. We will do everything that we can to prepare you, in the words of our mission, for service and leadership in business and society. We'll do everything we can. If you ever think we are falling down on that commitment, I invite you to find whoever's dean at that time and tell them, or walk across the street and tell the provost, because that's our commitment to you. But we want a commitment from you as well. We want you to commit to really enter into this community and enter into these work. Because at the end of the day, this is not really about you anymore. See, you've been selected to be here because we believe that through you engaging with business, we can change the world. The world has huge problems. You know what they are. Problems with food shortages, problems with climate change, and problems with ethnic hatred. There's huge problems around the world. And I'll tell you, I am convinced that as long as business leaders think that their whole job is to look down at the bottom line, they will never raise their eyes to look at the potential of how they might begin to contribute to the solution of some of these big problems. But if instead of asking, when confronted with choices, which of these two options on a risk-adjusted basis will give me a maximum ROI, if instead of asking that, we were able to get business leaders, if you were, as business leaders, able to say instead, given the assets under my control, given the core competencies in my organization, how can I best deploy this organization profitably as a business to make a difference in the world, to serve? We will change the world. And that's what this is really about. So let me put it in very succinct terms. It is our job to spread before you a banquet of opportunities. And it is your job to get home. Let me pray for you. God, I thank you so much for each person here. I thank you for whatever path that you have put them on to bring them to this place. I pray that over the course of their studies, that you will animate them with your Spirit, that you will inspire them with the possibilities, that you will give them what they need to go through the hard moments, the frustrating moments, the late nights. I pray that you will be present every step of the way. And I pray over and over again, you will raise up in front of them the possibilities that you have set out there and that you are calling them to. Thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. 2022. We have a video for you here to give you a glimpse into various opportunities and options that are available to you now as business.